RealGM Radio is powered by Blue Wire. Exciting times here at RealGM Radio. This week, we launched the expanded RealGM Radio network on Monday. We ran the Double Dribble podcast with Jared Dubin and Mo Dakhil. Check out their first episode on the network where they talked about what's going on with the Knicks, and they ran through some of their favorite non-stars this season. They're going to have another episode for you on Wednesday. Later this week on Thursday, I'm going to be joined by Mike Shearer for Good Take. You might know Mike from his Substack, Basketball Poetry, and from our previous Good Take segments. Now, Mike is joining the Real GM Radio Network in a more official capacity, joining me every Thursday to share our best takes about what's going on in and around the NBA. But today I'm going to be joined by Matt Moore for our monthly tiers episode. This is a fun one. We're going to be talking about which teams are most likely to meet or surpass expectations over the next year, meaning the playoffs, the offseason, and even next season. It's a fun one. Let's jump in. It's Real GM Radio. Matt Moore is here. You know what that means. It's time for some tiers. Matt, let's jump right in. What do we have for us today?
All right, so we're doing something different. Because I think it's a nice moment in the season. We haven't started the playoffs. Playoffs aren't quite here yet. To look at, the idea is, all right, this is the end of the season. We got a calendar year. What team is best positioned? How are the teams best positioned to meet expectations? So, end of this regular season, playoffs, offseason, next regular season. We go through all that process. Who do at the end of it we're going to be like, yeah, they've really met expectations. They met them. They got there. They did what we thought they were going to do, or that the public felt that they should do, or they capitalized on what their potential was, etc. How best positioned are you to meet expectations over the next calendar year?
I love this. This is a fascinating idea because not only does it put the teams under the microscope, right, and everything that they're doing, it also puts us under the microscope, too, in terms of what our own expectations are of some of these teams. I think this conversation could be really interesting. Let's jump right into your first tier.
All right, so the one I did this by the theme is you're trying to get up a mountain. You're trying to climb up the mountain. The mountain is the expectation. You're trying to get up there. Tier one is summit is in sight. So you can see, like, you're there. Like, you just got to make that last trek. And that's the hardest part, but you got to just make that trek. You got to get to where you're trying to get to. And that's Spurs, Jazz, the Boston Celtics, and the Indiana Pacers.
One of those teams is very surprising to me. I did not think we would be talking about the Utah Jazz this early, but I don't want to lead the show with the Utah Jazz, mostly for algorithm purposes. So let's talk about either the Spurs or the Celtics. The Spurs, I thought that was the team. When you told me that this was sort of the prompt ahead of time, I was like, yeah, the Spurs are going to be tier one. It kind of feels like maybe you base this entire ranking off of the theme of the Spurs, because here they are at this stage already. Yeah. Wemby at this young, going into his what next year will be his age 25 season, and or age 24 season. He is obviously awesome.
Yep.
And I think with him, he'll probably, he's already in the mix for best player in the NBA. He'll probably be, most people are projecting that he'll probably be there by the end of next season. Now we'll see, Jokic could have a little bit of a bounce back, even though it's crazy to even say bounce back. SGA is still doing his thing. But then you look at the rest of the Spurs roster and beyond Wemby, just so many young guys who can pop. And if they just make a couple more offseason tweaks to whatever it is that they feel like they need in the playoffs, this is a front office that has proven that they can do that, right? Like, they get the homework assignment and they knock it out early. And obviously I think the Spurs have to be first and foremost here.
Yeah, I just think no one expected them to be title contenders this season. They are title contenders. So a lot of this is like they've already done so much of the work and got themselves in position. Now, one of the interesting things about this exercise is that you don't know what regression is going to do. If you're having a really great season this year where everything kind of went right for you, what happens when things don't go right for you? So we may look at this a year later and be like, wow, we kind of expected it to be easy, and turns out, oh, nope, it wasn't. So there's always that kind of threat. But the problem is just like they get to make this playoff run, analyze what they have, and then make offseason decisions based off of need. That's always the best position to be in. To be like, you're already at the level of competition, but you don't have to gamble and be right. You can just be like, all right, let's see how this works. Oh, Devin Vassell didn't have a great playoff run. Oh, Stephon Castle turns out really struggled. Oh, we really did need another big for various minutes. Oh, Victor still has a ways to go with whatever it is that he has a ways to go with. And then you can make decisions in the offseason based off of that and improve. And so the Spurs are by far, I think, in the best position of anybody, just because they haven't peaked and they have the opportunity to figure out what they need to do to improve.
And the assets, right? Like we saw this with OKC a couple years ago, exactly to your point. They didn't make a big move at the deadline. They go in the playoffs. They lose to Dallas. And the next thing you know, they're like, all right, let's go get Alex Caruso. Let's go get Isaiah Hartenstein. They win the championship. With the Spurs, we don't really know what that's going to be, but that's sort of the point of the stress test of the playoffs. Not only do they have the ability to go see that stuff, they also have the assets to basically pull off anything that they want. They could just say, like, we need a shooter. Let's just go get the best three-point shooter available. And because of Wemby's contract and Dylan Harper's contract and all these other guys, De'Aaron Fox isn't making a ton of money. They also have the money to kind of go out and maybe overpay for a guy, at least for a couple of years, and really make a run. The other part of this exercise, Matt, is there's the possibility that they do it this playoffs anyway.
Yeah.
If they win if they make the finals, they've already surpassed expectations. And so they could already sort of check this box before we even get to the offseason.
Right.
Let's talk about Utah.
Okay,
Why in the world are they here?
Okay, so the expectation, right? The expectation is for the Jazz to build a winning team. Mm-hmm. Like that's the expectation. Is you've tanked for 3 years, you've been terrible, you've been this mess, you've been this joke, you've been this absolute abomination when it comes to tanking, and the goal is to be a good team, right? That's all the expectation is. They're not expected to win the championship. They're not expected to compete for a championship. Over the next calendar year, all you want to be able to say is like, oh, the Jazz are really good, and they've done it. They've already done, like they've done that. Like they've that's there. Like all they got to do next year is go through the process of winning the games, and that's mostly going to be based off of health. Like Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler, if they retain him, Keontae George, Ace Bailey's having a phenomenal March that he can build on. They have some depth pieces. I like Kyle Filipowski. They have all these guys. They're going to get the pick that they so desperately wanted. Even if it slips, they're still going to be in position. Like worst case scenario, they draft Darius Acuff. They've got all that. They will have the flexibility this summer to add pieces if they want to. They can do a sign and trade for Walker Kessler if they want more depth. They have versatility. They can move Lauri Markkanen if they decide they don't want to go in that direction. They want to build around two young guys, Jaren and Kessler. They can do that. They have all of these kind of optionality. All they have to do over the next calendar year, nobody thinks that they have to be a championship team. All they have to do next year is be in position to compete for the playoffs. And they are so far ahead of every other team in their tanking range based off of that. Like this team, if they had chosen to, would be a play-in team with a serious chance of making the playoffs this year. If they had just played their guys and traded for Jaren and Kessler hadn't gotten hurt, they would be in position this year to compete for like I like them better than a lot of teams in the play-in currently in the Western Conference. And this is the Western Conference. So that's why the Jazz are here. Is like all they got to do is take the final steps to becoming like a team on track. Now next year it resets and it becomes how do you go from being a playoff team to how do you become a serious contender? And that'll be a challenge. But for right now, over the next calendar year, they're set for the pick. They're not going to lose the pick. They're going to get a good pick. They're going to have optionality in the offseason, and they're going to have a good team next year. That's a phenomenal position to be in.
Yeah, I was kind of poking fun at you for including Utah here, but I agree. Like, they have to be here. They're only here because Keontae George made the leap that he made. Because Keontae George made that leap, I think it gave them the confidence to go ahead and take that swing at Jaren Jackson Jr. at the trade deadline. They said, oh, we kind of have a guy who could be maybe not an MVP level guy or whatever, but this is our guard. This is a guy who can run our offense. If he qualified, he would have easily been my most improved guy this year, but he's not going to play enough games because the Jazz are jazzing it up. But his playmaking has really gone up another level. His finishing is just transformed from where he had been the first couple of years of career. He's a very good finisher where he wasn't before. The 3-point shot, you could just look at the numbers. It's better, but it's beyond just shooting percentages. The way he plays is so much more like a lead guard now than it ever has been. And I think he gets so much credit for, and I was talking with people in Utah when they were in Miami a few weeks ago, and they just said, it's just night and day. The way that he approaches the game is different. Like the first couple of years, it was just all the immaturity stuff that you hear, sort of distracted by everything that comes with the NBA. And then this year, he really just committed to the work, put his head down, and you're seeing the results on the court. And now that they have that lead guard type, okay, let's run pick and roll with Jaren and pick and pop with Jaren Jackson Jr. We'll get Walker Kessler back and we could do pick and roll with him, and everybody around Walker Kessler will say, well, he can also shoot threes. Let's see it. Markkanen, obviously, an awesome all-star level scorer. Ace Bailey can slot in at that 2-guard spot, but the way that he's been shooting the 3 more recently, like he could potentially be a floor spacer for them. And then we mentioned the draft pick, right? A 10% chance of getting the number 1 pick, a 42% chance or whatever it is at top 4 in a pretty good draft class. Like they're going to get another guy here. So now they're going to all of a sudden have some depth on this team. We obviously know the coaching is good. I am fascinated by this team, Matt, because I think that they're not only going to be loaded, but they're going to be versatile next year where they could go big, they can go small if they want. And in the West, the ability to have those matchups is huge. I look at the teams in the West, like how many teams can we for sure say will be better than Utah next year, assuming, good health for everybody? Like Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Denver, obviously. Minnesota, I'd put up over Utah. I'll still put the Lakers with Luka, regardless of what happens with LeBron. I'll still put the Lakers over Utah.
Houston? That's a question.
Yeah, right? Now we're sort of getting into that sort of murky, are we sure? Yep. I'll still give the edge to Houston. Like, I don't want to overreact to stuff too much. So I'll give the edge to Houston. But after that, you and I love Phoenix. I'll probably give Phoenix the edge over there. But now we're getting into the, a good stretch during the season, an injury or two to a rival team. And all of a sudden we're talking about Utah maybe being in the top 6 next year in the West.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not going to surprise me if they're top 4 West. Like, I'm not going to be surprised. Wow. Because it's like when things click, they oftentimes click the whole way. When it's like, oh man, I mean, San Antonio this year, I think is a perfect example. I went in being like, well, I don't think their wings are good enough. And then Keldon Johnson was like, but imagine I'm the greatest shooter alive. And I was like, oh, okay, then I guess, yes, you are that good. Like everything clicked into place for San Antonio. And when Detroit's another one, when everything clicks into place, you don't just meet expectations, you radically exceed them. Because of it gets you into, this phrase is overused in the NBA, but they really do care about it, that flow state. Like once you hit there, it really does matter.
Yeah. And I think, again, coaching gets a big credit. We all like the coaching staff there in Utah. Put a pin in Boston. Indiana, to me, is a fascinating case because on one hand, you'd be like, well, they suck this year, but Halliburton's out. He's going to come back. Of course, they'll meet expectations. But the expectations are what with the Pacers? To get back to the finals or like, I think the Pacers are a really interesting case study for these tiers.
Yeah, so I think it's mostly I think that you have to say that the expectation is to reach the finals again because they were just there. That has to be the expectation. That's a high bar, but I look at this and I go, okay, Halliburton gets more time off, right, than Tatum. Gets more time off to recover. You add Zubac, which I think is such a big deal. Siakam is still so good. Nembhard has been good. I think they found some guys and developed some guys this year. They're going to probably add the pick if they don't get ruined by the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of ability to add talent. Like they get to kind of reconfigure a new team around Halliburton, Zubac, Siakam, and then figure out whatever else it is that they need. Now they lose Mathurin, which I think matters. But I also think that they are in such a good position to reconfigure and restock this year that it's like, okay, what was the expectation this year? Once they got completely hurt, right? Because we're doing the expectation from now. It's you need to get a top pick. All right, they're in position to do that. You need to be in a position to make moves this offseason to reload. You need to get Halliburton back, and you need to get back to what you were doing last year. And there's like really no reason to think that they won't be able to do that. Like Halliburton not recovering completely from the Achilles, which is normal. That's fair, but that's baked into the expectation as well. Like you can't be like he's going to be an MVP candidate next season. Well, he's coming off an Achilles, so that manages the expectation a little bit. And the whole thing is they have so much runway to get there by the end of the year, and they do have flexible contracts, and they do have so many good players. And Tyrese Halliburton is that good. That to me, with the big thing is just having Zubac to add as a big to solve so many of their center questions. On top of the internal development, all of those things combined, I think, put them in this tier for me.
So the way it goes wrong is that the pick in the lottery ends up 5, 6, 7, 8, and ends up going to the Clippers.
Right.
And they're like, okay, Nards, and then
Yep.
that happens. Halliburton comes back, something's off, not fully where he was. The Zubac thing doesn't fully take,
Yep.
and they're a mid team, and maybe we start questioning that run in 2025. We're like, we sure about that team? They never really captured that magic again. The way it goes right is that Halliburton's young, comes back just like Tatum did, and we're like, wow. Now, not only is Tatum the example guy now, where our star just tore the Achilles, but Tatum did so and so. Now Halliburton's also that example guy. He comes back. He goes right back to being a top 10 player. Everybody else now falls into place. Siakam is maybe the best second banana in the league. Then you've got Nembhard and Neesmith and all these guys now healthy, shooting threes, defending their butts off, all that stuff. The Zubac thing to me is so fascinating in this because you had the Miles Turner thing there, the pick and pop kind of space the floor kind of guy. And I remember Halliburton had this quote when he first got traded to Indiana about talking about his chemistry with Miles Turner. And in that quote, he said, I've played with pick and roll bigs my entire life. And so I always thought I preferred a pick and roll type of center until I got Miles Turner. And then he obviously had the floor spacing guy where they can run pick and pop. Well, now you've got that pick and roll guy again with Zubac. We saw what he could do with James Harden. I mean, he is just like a lumbering wall going towards the basket. He's not like an over the basket guy like an Obi Toppin or something like that, but he's really big. He's a huge catch radius and a huge target for Halliburton to pass to. And I look at all of Halliburton's teammates as Halliburton's the quarterback, you guys are the receivers. And to me, Zubac is like a Rob Gronkowski tight end where it's just like throw him the ball going up the seam, and he's just going to catch it in traffic every single time. And I'm really interested to see how much fun Halliburton has with that. And when Halliburton is tapping into fun, that's when the Pacers are at their most dangerous and their best. And I'm with you here. I'm kind of expecting a fun season for Indiana next year. The odds are in their favor of keeping this pick. If they add one of these super athletes in this draft, whether it's Darren Peterson or maybe somebody a little bit lower, depending on where it falls, that's an interesting type of receiver for Halliburton to have. And as much as things could go wrong, I just trust this front office and this coaching staff and Halliburton's leadership and the joy they imbues everybody with. I trust that way more than this going the other direction. So I'm with you here on Indiana is my point.
Yep.
Okay, let's do Boston.
Sorry, buddy. They're in range of winning the title this year. What is the argument that they get worse if they choose to? If they don't duck the tax next year, which they probably will, because they're going to probably try and break the repeater, then they can add. They have roster flexibility and salary flexibility to go ahead and keep adding components to improve the team. They draft extremely well. They develop extremely well. They've built sustainable success over and over and over again. Jason Tatum has come back from the Achilles and looks phenomenal. What is the reason why the Boston Celtics will not be in competition to once again make a conference finals this year and next year?
Jesus loves them, man. I have no idea. It keeps working out for Boston. I don't know. No, to their credit, like Mazzulla is awesome. We've talked about this on Locked On NBA 100 times. Like I would have him as coach of the year and I wouldn't even think twice about it. It's a runaway to me. And Tatum looks great, man. He looks great. Like I said, he's the example guy now. He's in the NFL. Adrian Peterson, ACL. Like everybody's like, he came back in 4 days. Like, look at that. Like Tatum's now that guy.
The rock that could slip out from underneath them and slide them back down the mountain is the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum stuff.
Yep.
And Boston fans love to say that this isn't a thing. The difference is like, if you were trying to antagonize the situation, it gets presented as it's absolutely a problem, or they hate each other, or Jaylen wants out. And if you were trying to defend it, no, they're totally copacetic, and none of them have it. They're totally happy being in this position for the rest of their careers. And the answer is like in the middle, where it's like, does Jaylen probably want his own team after this? Yeah, probably. He's probably like, I'm tired of being disrespected, and I've been in Boston a long time, and like a change of scenery would probably be great. But if you're like, we're not trading you, we're going to keep paying you, we can win championships with you, you'd be like, all right, cool. I will do my job. Like Jaylen Brown Jaylen always kills me because it's like half of the way, it's like this amazing intellectual and entrepreneur with like really good ideas and great social change. And then like every now and then he'll like say something where I'm like, come on, man. Yeah. And like, it's so that's the type of guy that Jalen is. But the biggest thing is that Jalen's a total professional.
Yep.
Is that he shows up to work, he plays hard, his body's ready, he does the work, he plays great, he's not a problem for teammates. Like Jalen's a complete pro. And so they might just keep it together. But if there does reach a point where Jalen is just like, look, I just would kind of like a change of scenery, that's okay. He's been there so long. They won a championship. But being like, okay, especially like if they won a second one this year, that would, I think, empower him more than ever. That's where it gets to, is like, you would think that it's like, well, you won 2 championships. Why would you leave? And the answer is probably from Jalen's perspective of like, yeah, we won 2 championships. So now I get to go, like, I've already done that. So I can go see what else. But to me, like, Boston's is as well set up as any team in the league to reach their expectations over the next year.
They can, as we've seen, they can lose one of their wings and it's fine. So even if they lose Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown instead of Jason Tatum, they have Jason Tatum next year. And I'm glad you brought up the Brown thing, though, because we know that one of his idols is Kyrie Irving. It's one of his mentors, right? When they really got along when Brown first got drafted there, and they still have a relationship now. And Kyrie did this, right? He won the championship with Cleveland, said, I want my own team, and then left. And it obviously did not work out. But Jaylen Brown's a different player. He's a better player than Kyrie Irving ever was. I think that's fair to say. And as a two-way wing, it's just sort of easier to build a team like that around Jaylen Brown, who is a Finals MVP. And so if Jaylen Brown looks around and says, I kind of want my own team, I'm with you. Some people would just flambe him. Just how could you leave a winning situation? Every NBA player gets one career. They get one shot at this. And if he is worried about wondering one day after he retires, what would it have been like had I had my own team?
Yep.
I don't blame him in the slightest for wanting that. And that's not me as a Heat guy hoping for the breakup. Maybe it is a little bit. But it would make a lot of sense to me. And I, by the way, think he could do it. I don't know that I thought that even after they won the Finals MVP. I certainly think that after this year, right? He's proven that. And so if he wants that opportunity, I think it's a really interesting storyline to watch because, and Bill Simmons has pointed this out on his podcast 100 times, but it's a lot of these quotes from Jaylen Brown this year seems like a little too happy to be the guy, right? He's really relishing in it. And to be that guy and to do it at the level he did it and then have to slide back into a different kind of role because Tatum comes back, you do wonder what that does to a player of Brown's quality. So yeah, I'm there. That's how it goes wrong. But to your point, like, this front office is proven, this coaching staff is proven, the infrastructure of this thing is proven. Like, they're going to be good no matter what. So
you're seething resentment of them. It's so funny. Second tier.
Yep.
This is beginning final ascent. So this is like you've climbed all the way up, and all you got to do is get up the boulder, the rock hill. You got to climb up the rocks to get to the top. Okay. Just 3 teams: Thunder, Lakers, Pistons. That's it. If you say, how can OKC not be at the top? The reason is because sustaining success is harder than reaching it, in my opinion. And they already won the title, so they already climbed this is like they climbed Everest, and now they got to go. They came back down, and now they got to go. They've done all the work to get back up, and now they got to do it again, and then they got to come back down, and then they got to do it again, and that's just like a really hard bar. Hartenstein is a question. I think the executives I talked to, everyone is like really interested to see what happens with Hartenstein this summer. Caruso's probably going to start slipping a little bit, but that's going to probably start being a thing. A lot of questions about J-Dub, although I still think J-Dub's like got a lot of career growth ahead of him over the next 2 seasons. I think that's really where he starts to blossom and become the player that I think he's capable of being. I think Chet Holmgren has made a genuine leap this season. He's so much better than he was last year in a lot of areas. And so, yeah, like Thunder are there. This is no question. They just can't be at the top because they've already done it. So, and getting back is always harder. So that's my thought on the Thunder.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you here. 2 straight 60-win seasons. They've already won 1 championship. Favorites to win the championship again. That third year, and we've seen this from great teams in the past, that tends to be your, let's chill in the regular season for a little bit. The last 2 years were a real grind. Because also remember, a lot more mileage on these guys. First, Shea plays a lot of games, plays a lot of minutes. It wouldn't be shocking to me if he tried to take a little bit of a step back next year during the regular season to preserve himself. There's a lot of miles, a lot of games played when you go through 2 full postseasons, or what likely will be a full postseason or something close to it this year for them. this tends to be the year we see great teams just sort of back off a little bit in the regular season, and then who knows what that means. It's also like in music where a group or an artist comes out with two like classics, like two awesome play, and then you always get what after that you get the Back to Basics album where they're just like, look, I can't be in the studio for another 2 years working on this thing. Let's just go back to basics. I want that garage sound again, and then they kind of frame it that way. But really, what it is they don't want to do all that work anymore because
Right.
it's exhausting. And so with OKC, it wouldn't shock me if they got a back to basics here. Plus, all the things that you said with the roster, I think are really interesting and worth keeping an eye on. Why the Lakers here?
They're the third seed in the Western Conference, despite the fact that their first half of the season was so massively disappointing. They've gotten better as the year has gone on. They've found better chemistry. Reeves continues to be awesome if they retain him. Now, I have questions about Luka and Reeves from a playoff standpoint together. They're defending really well right now. I don't know how much I buy it, how much is just effort, but I think it's like, okay, they do get credit for that. And then they clear $52 million off the books this summer if LeBron leaves.
Ding ding.
And they get a lot of optionality of what they want to do with that money. They can reshape their roster pretty easily. This is a flexible thing. This is basically, they reset expectations, I think, at the trade deadline, where it was like, this team is just not good. Like, they're just not very good. They're fine, but they're not very good. And now it's like, they're pretty good now. Like, they're third seed in the West. Like, they're really good. Luka's having an MVP caliber season. Okay. Can you get better? Yes. Can you make a playoff run this year? Yes. Can you get better in the summer? Yes. Can you have an even better season next year? Yes. So it's like there are so many ways for them to find the right role man with Luka. There's so many ways for them to be able, like, I'm actually more interested in what they could do in the sign and trade with Reeves, because I think a lot of teams would actually give up assets. Like if you talk to Utah and you're like, well, okay, we want Kessler and this other thing and this other thing, they're probably going to do that. Now, I don't know if that's possible because Kessler's RFA, but in general, you can make all these types of moves and be able to kind of reconfigure whatever it is that you want to do. And so to me, like, a lot of it this season is proof of JJ Redick, which gets you have the superstar that was handed to you that you didn't have to do anything for.
Right.
You have a really good player in Austin Reeves.
Yep.
You have a really good coach. And you have $52 million expiring. And that to me gets you into a really great position for you to be able to get where the Lakers always want to go, which is another title.
So as much as title expectations are always the case with the Lakers, especially when you have LeBron and Luka on the roster, you could argue they've already surpassed expectations. Right. And so as a 3 seed, especially to your point where they were earlier in the year at the midway point, the fact that they're here now is remarkable. And look, right now, they play the Rockets in the first round. Everybody, I think, would take the Lakers in that series. Let's say that they beat the Rockets in the first round. Then you're looking at San Antonio potentially in the next round. Everybody would favor the Spurs, but the Lakers have experience. You could start talking yourself into stuff, whatever. But the key point you made is the one about the offseason. I think, like I said, they've already surpassed expectations because this roster makes almost zero sense. It's jumbled. A lot of credit goes to LeBron James for sliding into this role over this last stretch. But if you could now turn those spots and that money into just things that fit better, and all of a sudden the roster just makes sense next year and there's a pecking order, we have seen what Luka can do with that kind of team, right?
Yeah.
Like, where he is the clear number 1 guy with a good number 2 option, whether it's Austin Reeves. I think they should keep Reeves and you bring him in and let him play the Kyrie role. I think it's an awesome spot for him. And then you just surround those guys with 3-and-D types. Go find a rim roller, whether it's DeAndre Ayton, sticking around and really embracing that Clint Capella role, or maybe finding some support there, whatever it is. It just feels like there's a way for this team to just do it easier next year with the right kind of players and reconstructing the roster in a way that just makes more sense around Luka. And if LeBron really is going to leave the Lakers this offseason, that gives them the pathway to do all of that. So I'm with you here on the Lakers. The Pistons, I'm going to guess why you have them here. This is the classic young team, overachieves, high seed in their conference, go to the playoffs, probably lose, figure out what you need, do those things, grow those additions, and then you're sort of back in it next year.
Yeah. So one of the things with this like final ascent thing is like, yeah, you made it this far, but you better be careful where you step, because you can, the Lakers and Pistons face the same problem. if you have success this year and you over-index on it and don't take a real critical look at yourself and really try and come back with a better and different identity next year, and you just try and run it back, you really risk stagnation and regression. And that's true for both of these teams. With Detroit, it's just like you said, where it's like, look, they can lose I think they lose in the second round. And that's based off of a lot of historical stuff I've done on teams that shoot like they do. They're probably going to lose in the second round. And people will be like, that's crazy. They won 60 plus games. They, blah, 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 blah. I love the Pistons. They're awesome. They're so incredible. It's very hard to advance in the playoffs when you can't shoot, and they can't shoot. But you do that, you come back and you say like, okay, but we were so good. But the problem is like next year, are you going to defend as well as you did this year? Are you going to be the absolute dogs that you were on every screen that you were this year? Are you going to be the absolute? Now they offset this with internal improvement because Cade's only going to be better, and Asar's only going to be better, and Ron Holland's only going to be better. Like they have Duran's only going to be better. Like these guys are in the perfect spot to just get like a little bit better every year, even if their seasons aren't as good. They'll move Tobias Harris, so they'll have like that money comes off. I don't know what they can do in the replacement level, but given where their contracts are at, but they do have like a little bit of optionality there to go ahead and add some new things. Maybe they go back and they get a mix of last year and this year, where it's like, hey, we added all this playmaking this year with Duncan Robinson and LeVert, and all these other guys got better. What if we add the shooting back on top of that? Right, Robinson's a good shooter, but what if we add another sharpshooter to that component? That gets you in position to be able to dominate the Eastern Conference and win again. Like it is entirely possible. They put together back-to-back 60-plus win seasons, which is very difficult to do. Secure the 1 seed next year, and then next year we're just like, man, yeah, Boston's good, and yeah, the Knicks are good, and yeah, the Cavs are good, but like it's the Pistons. Like they run the conference now, which is crazy for where they were 3 years ago, losing 28 in a row. But I also think like they got to step carefully here, because one little move in the wrong direction, one little bit of regression, and they can really take a tumble down the mountain.
Yeah, I mean, the playoffs have the opportunity to expose them, right? And then all of a sudden you have teams running whatever opponent eliminates them potentially here in the playoffs. And yeah, this next move to me is huge. And I kept going back and forth going into the trade deadline. Should they make the big move? Should they take that swing? They got a real chance. Like I said, I go back and forth even after the trade deadline, wondering what they should have done. I do think that this next move for them is so important that it probably does make more sense to do it in the offseason when you have a little bit more room and time to think about it and make the right move here, as opposed to the trade deadline where you're just dealing with a little bit more of a limited supply of players who are available and an ability to trade for those players midseason. But, I have a short list of names that I like for Detroit. And to me, what's interesting is how do you include that? Because you're right, it's the shooting. They need to get somebody who can legitimately space the floor around Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham, but also not take away from all the things that make the Pistons, right? Like you need that guy. I think about those classic good Pistons teams, like with from the early aughts. Rip Hamilton was sort of their offensive guy, but he didn't really take away from what else they were doing, right? Like, right. And so who's that for this Pistons team? So, the obvious names, Michael Porter Jr., Trey Murphy III, the two names that were, talked a lot about in Detroit before the deadline, still on their current teams. Maybe they're available, although I still don't know why New Orleans would trade Trey Murphy at this point. He's really good, but whatever. He's out there. Grayson Allen, I thought about. I'm like, is that moving the needle enough? Not really, nope. Right? Although he does sort of fit that kind of I'll punch you in the face type mentality. Zach LaVine, not right, just because of the money. Tyler Hero or Norm Powell from Miami? Is that too much of a defensive step back?
And you don't need another ball handler. I don't think you need another ball handler.
Well, that's kind of where I run into. Don't you need a little bit more ball handling for when Cade is off the floor? Like, if you have somebody like that, I'm trying to think of who could be the Jalen Williams to his Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
So the problem is, like, they're shifting into a playoff gear now. And in the playoffs, you don't need that. Like, Cade's going to play 42 minutes a game, right? Like, a good backup point guard would be helpful for sure. But I just don't. I don't wind up being there. You know, it actually is like, I think more of Rui Hachimura shooting 43% from three this year. Lakers would actually would definitely move him. Good wing defender. If you're talking about on-ball creation, I get it because it's like, all right, if they apply pressure on Cade, one of the things that I will say this bothers me because the Nuggets face this too. Everyone's like, well, you need a secondary ball handler for when they apply ball pressure in the playoffs. Okay. If you are at half court and two guys apply pressure on you, you should be able to generate a 4-on-3.
NBA players should be able to do that. Yeah, you don't need like an all-pro level guard to figure
And
it
like
out.
the answer in all this is like execute. It's not even execute better. It's not like play better. It's okay. If they're going to do that, bring your screen to half court. Like bring Aaron Gordon up and screen. If they're going to press Cade, Duran's got the athleticism, unlike Jokic does. Bring Duran to half court and just be like, we're going to get you Cade Cunningham running full speed at you. Now, that's actually not a great thing because Cade can't hit layups. But like,
Asar Thompson on the short roll, right? Crazy athlete.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is you want this team is really young and with a lot of good talent. I really like Ron Holland. I really like Asar Thompson. I want room for those guys to grow.
I got the guy. I got it. It's Ty Jerome from Memphis.
It's a good name. Just bring him. He does have to start.
Yep.
Something like that plus something else, maybe to shore up the wing, especially as Tobias Harris gets older. Maybe that's the move.
And they'll do it because Ty Jerome might take shots away from Zach Edey, so we got to get rid of him. So
fascinated to see where Memphis ends up here. That was it for tier 2, right?
Yep. This one I titled "Just Be Good." For the mountain metaphor, this is more of just like, hey, you're on the path, just don't get lost. Just like just follow the trail.
Yeah.
Right. Just don't fall off the side of a cliff. It's 3 teams. Hornets, Wizards, Hawks. That's it. Because like the bar is very low for these teams.
Shout out to the Southeast Division. Almost.
Yeah, the bar is very low for these teams. Mm-hmm. With the Hawks, I think it's genuinely like, look, we don't know how good Jalen Johnson is. Like we don't know if this March run is real or if it's just like they got hot at the right time, which those teams often regress. But like they have so many guys that can continue to get better. Like Dyson, I think, has made real strides this year. Obviously, Jalen's is great. Okongwu, they've really figured out something. You know, CJ's been actually awesome for them. It's like they have a good team. They have a team that can be, if things go right for them, they could be a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference next year, and nobody's expecting them to go higher than that.
Right.
Next year is like when we get here next year. Now it's going to be like, okay, you made the playoffs last year. You were a non-home court team in the playoffs the year after. Where are you going?
Yeah. But this year is all about, and when we say this year, it's the rest of this season and next season. I'm with you. I think that for once, the expectations are realistic for this Hawks team, where during the Trae Young era, it was always like, hey, are they going to make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals? And with that Trae Young trade, they kind of reset the expectations on all of this. Now it's a good vibes team. It's feel-good stuff. And so there might be some people that look at them as, and, you know, we always get like the Twitter hipster dark horse team of the year, and I could see Atlanta maybe sliding into that next year. It's like, look at the way they finished, blah 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 blah. I really like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like that's an original thought.
Well,
like,
and also we'll hear all that. The picks, man.
Well, they have the New Orleans pick.
Like,
if that ends up hitting,
if that's like, here's the thing, because you get rid of Trae, and the problem is you don't want to replace Trae with another Trae, and this guy is the most Traes of all the guys of the draft, but I just love him way more. What if they get a cuff? And you have that kind of scoring capacity with that kind of defense? You have basically built the 0-1 Sixers. Great defense, positional versatility, great coaching, and a guy whose model is basically Iverson. It's a really interesting kind of concept. Or they can get a more versatile player, or they can get like a pure point. Like all these kind of optionality. Like, so they have a lot of ways to improve over the next calendar year. They have low expectations and a lot of ways to improve. That's what gets them here.
Yeah, like I'd be very careful with this pick, depending on where it ends up, because I really like some of the two-way stuff that they built here and their ability to kind of get into some different lineups. But they're good, and everybody's improving. Like Okongwu's had a leap this year. Jalen Johnson obviously is awesome. You know, there's a lot going on in Atlanta that a lot of people like. Charlotte. Well, let me go to Washington first. They're here because they'll just get Trae Young and Anthony Davis back, and anything opposed to what we've seen from Washington the last couple of years is better. Even
no
with
one
Trae
won't
Young
be.
And Anthony Davis,
no one
like,
will be
disappointed.
disappointed.
This is better.
with Trey Young and Anthony Davis, with the deals that they're going to give them, which I love that they're giving them these 3-year deals. I think it's awesome to be like, no, we love you. We're all in on you for a window. And then we're going to try and build off of that. That's perfect. With Trey Young and Anthony Davis, that combo anywhere else comes with very, very, very high expectations. With the Wizards, it's going to be like, they might be a play-in team in the Eastern Conference. And that's just like a really low bar.
And fun to watch, right? Like, hey, real basketball. Like,
and here
we could do this.
I am just going to scream it from the mountains. I promise you, they are so much better than what they've like. I was arguing with somebody about this where they're just like, come on, like these guys aren't good. Like, look at their record. And I'm like, no. They have purposely it's not just that they have not played the guys. When they were playing guys, they were playing styles that I think were detrimental to their success. And I think that's actually very long-term harmful because now you have to beat bad habits out of them again. But like Keyshawn George is good. Trey Johnson is good.
Very good.
Alex Sarr is good. Like they have guys. Bo Carrington, I think, actually turned a corner this year, which is really big for them. Bilal Coulibaly had a great end of the season. Like there's talent here. The Wizards are going to be decent, and that low bar means that all they got to do is just like stay on the trail.
Yeah, I mean, what Trey Young and Anthony Davis gives them is a tent pole on offense and Trey Young. Hey, we can run pick and roll. We have a guy who can get us the ball. And on defense, obviously, Anthony Davis is a great rim protector when he's healthy. He's still very, very good defensively. He gives them a tent pole, something to build around defensively. And with those two of those guys, now you start to look like a real basketball team. Because as much as I like Trey Johnson and Coulibaly, and I really, really like Keyshawn George, I don't picture any of them being the number one option on a team. And so now that they get to grow in roles that are more befitting of who they ultimately, hopefully, will end up becoming, I really like what they did in terms of this. And maybe I'm wrong, but I love these additions. I love the fact, like you said, that hey, let's just do this for a couple of years, really build out what is an actual basketball team, build good habits, actually develop in a way that looks like playing basketball as opposed to whatever the Washington Wizards were doing for most of the season. And let's go from there. I think people are going to be surprised by how good some of these other players are, to your point. Like, not a lot of people are watching the Wizards. But people are going to be like, oh, wow, Keyshawn George is really good. It's like, yeah, dude, he's been good. But now they're playing serious basketball, and it matters.
Trey Young, Darren Peterson, Keyshawn George, Anthony Davis, Alex Sarr.
I don't love Darren Peterson because that steps on Trey Johnson a little bit.
I know. I don't like it, but it's just like, if you need scoring punch, like the long term there is Trey Johnson, Darren Peterson together.
Yeah.
You have Trey Johnson and Darren Peterson together.
Whew. Interesting.
Whew. Like it.
How does Charlotte stay on this trail? And it feels like their trail is like a little bit more exciting than some of these other trails, right? These other trails just have like some interesting flowers. They've got like tigers and like really fun stuff. Maybe not. I don't know if tigers are fun, but like fun stuff on their hiking trail. There's some interesting stuff happening in Charlotte.
They are a little bit more at risk than the other two, not only because the expectations I think are now higher because their season has been a little bit more like the Hawks were basically like miserable and then really good at the end. The Hornets, I do worry that there's a lot of ways that things don't go right next year with shooting performance. There's the other thing I really worry about. People forget this. So 2017, I believe, maybe 18. I'm trying to think when that happened. It's been so long now. Pelicans make the playoffs. Anthony Davis looks awesome, and they upset the Blazers. And there's all of this opportunity there. That summer, Rich Paul convinces Anthony Davis to join Clutch. Davis finally makes the playoffs with the Pelicans, and Pelicans fans reward for all of that waiting and all of that hoping and all that dealing with all the misery of it is that Clutch comes in and engineers a trade to the Lakers. I have a small level of concern about that happening with LaMelo Ball. Of like, makes the playoffs. Everyone's like, oh my God, LaMelo's a playoff killer. Oh, LaMelo's asking out. What? But you just made the playoff. That's how it goes. Maybe it doesn't happen though. And if it doesn't, like Charles Lee has engineered this team. They are the team that the analytic wonks have to look at and be like, oh my God. Because like they grade out so high under my numbers and my projections. based off of the fact that it's like, we're going to take a lot of threes. We're not going to let you take a lot of threes. We're going to absolutely dominate on the inside defensively, and we're going to get a lot of rebounds. Yes. Awesome. All of this. Good. Possession control, mathematical edge. Hurrah. Right? They play with a lot of precision. They play with a lot of understanding. They're still kind of figuring out the late game stuff. Khan's only going to get better. There's just like so much opportunity here, I think, for like Kalkbrenner to get better. And if they can move Miles Bridges, finally, they're going to be able to add, different versatility. What they've added with, I think, Diabate, I think is so interesting with his flexibility. Kalkbrenner is really underrated. They have like a lot of guys that are good, going to get better.
Yeah.
The curve is still there.
Yeah.
It's just like, just don't get ahead of yourselves, and you should be in a really good spot to keep, like, you should be in competent. You should be the Raptors next year, 5-6. That's where you should be.
Yeah, everybody says development isn't linear for these young guys, but they have so many good young guys that if not all of them develop next year, like take a major step next year, if one or two of them do, that's enough for this team, especially considering what the ceilings for guys like Knipple and Brandon Miller are. The LaMelo Ball thing is really interesting, and it's worth keeping an eye on. But overall, this isn't just a team that's hitting a lot of threes and playing fast and taking teams by surprise. There's real infrastructure here to how they want to play. There's a strategy to why they take so many threes. It's not, yay, fun threes. We want to play fast. LaMelo Ball shooting from 40 feet, all this stuff. No. There's a strategy here. It's a numbers game. They're winning these margins. They're the baby Celtics. It's the same exact formula as Joe Mazzulla, and there's a reason for that. Charles Lee came from Mazzulla's staff, so like they're doing it right. They're doing it. There's a ton of talent here. I'm in on Charlotte. I'm with you here. Next tier.
This is kind of the inverse of the last tier, which is, this is just don't be bad. And this is kind of like, we're just proud of you for getting on the trail. When I first moved to Colorado, I thought it was like, no, like I was never an outdoors guy. And I was like, well, I've never gone hiking. Like, I don't know what you need. Like what stuff do you need? And it seems like this big thing that you have to know. And then it's just like, it's walking, Matt. It's just walking. That's all it is. You have to drive somewhere and start walking on a path. That's it. And the Suns and the Clippers just have to keep hey, you found the trail. That's good enough for right now. That's totally good. The Suns were so completely lost after the Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal debacle. So for them to find Jordan Ott and have this chemistry and have a culture and have guys that are really kind of showing up and have guys that you can feel really good about. Oso Ighodaro being, I was high on him in the offseason, and he's been so good for them defensively. They're not like awesome in any sort of category versus like the Hornets. It's like they're weak in some areas, but they're really awesome in others. The Suns are just like, they're pretty good in a lot of them. And so like for them, it's just like, hey, you have ducked being this horrendous team who's owes all of their picks to Houston. That's all you really had to do, was avoid that. The Clippers, same deal, where their trades got them out of, oh my God, we have an aging core that can't win a championship. We owe all of our picks to OKC. We're about to get hit with more pick probably punishments based off of the aspiration deal. This is a disaster. And now with Benedict Mathurin and Darius Garland, it's like, oh no, we're pretty good. Like, we're just gonna be like a pretty good team. That's good enough. And so like their expectations are so managed at this point that they're above a lot of the other teams because they don't have to do a lot except just focus on one foot in front of the other.
I love what Phoenix has done this year. There's a clear pecking order in terms of what that team is. It really feels like they were teetering on, we're on Devin Booker watch. And it kind of feels like they've pulled themselves back from that ledge, where now Booker is the guy in Phoenix. The team makes sense around him. Now, we could easily go back to Devin Booker watch if they do not take a step forward over the next couple of years. But right now, I think they're safe. And with the Clippers, I think they won the trade deadline. I think that the Clippers are just basically saved the future of the team with the Zubac trade and the Harden trade. It's like, yeah, I don't know what they can ultimately be. They're not going to have the expectations of the Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden thing. But Darius Garland is a legitimately good player, and the way that he's played lately is awesome. Benedict Mathurin I've always been a big fan of. I love that he's getting opportunity with the Clippers right now. And there's other, like Isaiah Jackson was a nice player to grab at the deadline too. Like there's other guys that we like on that team. So I think this makes a lot of sense. Who's next? Next tier, I guess.
This one is we may have to go back / make sure that you have the Rangers on call to get them off the mountain. Nuggets, Wolves, Knicks, Cavaliers. So you have 4 teams with championship expectations that are getting a little long in the tooth. Cat's 31, Jokic is 31, Donovan Mitchell's coming up on, I think he's coming up on 30. Harden's obviously in his mid-30s. Rudy Gobert is going to be 33. Like, time's running out. Like, you are running out of the window. You had a really good window. You have competed. You have won playoff games. Knicks made 2 Eastern Conference Finals. The Nuggets won a championship and have made the second round several times. The Cavaliers won 60 games last season. They've had like a lot of regular season success, but not a lot of playoff runs. The Wolves made 2 Western Conference Finals in a row. These teams have had success, but they haven't been able to get the whole way. And now it's like, I don't know if they are going to have enough energy to get up there. And if they don't, you have to start asking if it's time to go back down the mountain and get a different plan. So they're under the most pressure, obviously, this season. And if it doesn't work this season, what do you do next year? Is your chances next year going to be better or worse based off the age curve next season? And that gets a little dicey.
Yeah, I want to start with the Eastern Conference teams, the Knicks and the Cavs. Expectations couldn't be higher for these teams, right? It's win the finals. It's win the finals. It's championship or bust for both of those teams. So for them to be this far down on this list makes a lot of sense. Now, if they win the championship this year, boom, you've surpassed expectations. But odds are they're not gonna. They could. I'm just saying odds are they're not going to. And so that puts you on your back foot a little bit if you're either of these organizations, because now if you're Cleveland, you're looking at the Donovan Mitchell extension. You're saying, is he going to sign it? And are you looking at a potential waiting game of a year? Or, even worse for them, an ask out over this summer that's already been, discussed in league circles. And then you've got the Knicks part of this where you've got the owner saying it's championship or bust. And for both of these teams, the talent is undeniably there. And yet nobody trusts them to deliver on it. They're too wobbly in both instances. And unless they get over the hump and figure out how to do it and be less wobbly and really just deliver when they need to deliver, then they're probably going to fall short of those massive expectations. In terms of your Western Conference teams, I keep saying this about Minnesota. I don't know when it's going to happen. I love Anthony Edwards. I love Chris Finch. I love a lot of guys on that roster. But the way that the roster is built, there is going to be a year where they take a step back. It's just going to happen. Unless Tim Connolly is able to reinvent that roster on the fly and do some massive Gobert or Randall type of move that reconfigures the roster around whatever the next version of the Timberwolves looks like around Anthony Edwards, there's going to be a year where they take a step back. And it very well could be next year for Minnesota. It could be this year for Minnesota if they don't make it back to the Western Conference Finals. I mean, I guess that would qualify technically as a step back from where they've been the last couple of years, but there's going to get a time, and like you said, Gobert's getting older. There's going to be a point where Minnesota has to say, this is a little bit of a reset year for us.
Yeah. Or, everything clicks and Ant becomes the best player in the world and they win the title.
Yeah, it doesn't
right?
matter.
Gobert is still so good too. It's like, he's not like creaking. It's just like the clock's on. And that I think is the problem.
And there's some weird stuff about like on offense. They just won't, they are not throwing him the ball even more than they weren't throwing him the ball before.
It gets less and less. Yeah.
And it's like, that's not fun, even for a defensive minded player.
But the other thing here is you have to be really cautious, because if the idea is like they got to get a big who can score, like you still want somebody good on defense. Okay, so Jared Allen's really good defensively. He's really good defensively. He's anchored top 5 defenses. Mm-hmm. The Magic shifted away. They changed their identity from defense to offense, and then they became just like a mediocre offense and a mediocre defense.
Right.
And that doesn't get you anywhere. Like it's better for you to be elite in one of those areas, but like the goal has to be elite in both. And it's hard to be more elite than you are with Rudy.
Mm-hmm. With Denver, I know you've talked about this before. It just feels like something might have to give with the roster. Is that kind of why they're here?
I mean, they're still so good. And I think there's a temptation from the front office to kind of believe that they can do this. One of the questions that everybody has is they got out of the repeater this year. They ducked it. They ducked the tax. They didn't get out of the repeater. They ducked the tax. They got to do it again to break the repeater, which would mean giving up one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And that gets really dicey. You give up Aaron Gordon, you're giving up the soul of the team, the lifeblood of the team, one of the most versatile and best role players, an absolute hero in Denver. Like Aaron Gordon's getting his jersey retired here. You give up Jamal Murray, you're giving up a guy that's probably going to be like in strong consideration for all NBA this season, coming off his best season. You can move Cam Johnson, but if you move Cam Johnson, you are also going to have to give up on Peyton. You can't re-sign Peyton Watson. So you lose Peyton Watson and Cam Johnson. Who are your wings? Like, that the money stuff gets real dicey with Denver. If they run everybody back, they'll still be great. Jokic will still be awesome. Jokic could probably use a little bit of the refinement. Like he needs to get back to, all right, I really got to take care of my body. We keep waiting for him to reach that point. He did so well when he was like 25, and that's what sparked his prime. He's going to have that 30s moment again of just like, I can't do this. In the 20s, it's like, if I reshape my workouts, I could be awesome.
Right.
Which is what happened. Felipe Eichenberg like told him, you can be awesome, but you got to want it. And he did that. Then you're awesome. And then you have to hit the second point, which is you're 30, and you're like, if I don't work out, I won't be awesome.
Yeah, and it's about maintenance, right?
Yeah, and that's a lot, harder, I think, to deal with the stresses of NBA life. So, they're unlikely to get past San Antonio and OKC. And then next year, there's the question, like the Peyton Watson, Cam Johnson question is like a really serious one. Cam's been really good for them. Peyton has a lot of potential. How do you navigate that? You can't keep everybody. What do you do? They have the best offense in the league right now. They have the best half-court offense since Synergy started tracking, Wes. That's how good their offense is. And their defense has been completely jacked by the number of injuries they've had this year, but like that's how it goes. This was the window, and they weren't able to hit it because of injuries to get themselves in a better seeding position to avoid really tough matchups the whole way. And so for me, it's just like, yeah, like this can get, and then you have the looming fact of Jokic's extension eligible July 1st. And that's until that's on paper, and he's made every indication he's going to sign, but until that's on paper, done in ink, there's going to be concern.
I keep going back to this with Denver as we see that there's windows for these teams, specifically for these great players to maximize their championships. And for me, they should have one more. And to me, the year that they missed is 2022. And the Jamal Murray injury, obviously, is the thing. That, I thought, cost them a championship in 2022. I thought they were the best team in the league that year before Murray got hurt. And then you obviously win in 2023. They were the runaway best team in the league that year. Favorites to get back in 2024. Bruce Brown leaves, different things. And so you could argue maybe ownership cost them a chance at another one there.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been the window. And once you kind of get out of that window, it's really hard to bring that window back.
Yep.
It's really, really hard. And it takes something pretty dramatic for that window to open back up again, whether it's like the 2022 Warriors, where the best team in the league just got one of the most important players got hurt. That could happen again for Denver, right? Somebody gets hurt on one of these teams in front of them, and then their path just opens up a little bit. And, as long as you have Jokic, you give yourself a chance to at least take advantage of that path. But
look at the Bucks.
Like they're another team, right? They only got the one. And Giannis's injury the next year in the first round maybe cost them a series against the Miami Heat, and then boom, the window's closed. That's it. And so, yeah, these windows are really, really hard to reopen. Worth mentioning before we get out of this, two of the teams that you've mentioned in this tier are both Giannis teams, right? Minnesota and New York. And so obviously if they make a Giannis trade, that might change them. It certainly moves expectations a lot higher, but it also makes the team a lot better too, potentially. Although the Minnesota thing to me is an interesting fit, but maybe that's a different podcast. What's the next tier?
This tier is called the Sixers, and it is the Sixers.
They're very good.
That's it. Like, how do I put expectations on this team? You have Joel Embiid, Paul George. You have a really fun young core that's been really exciting this year, and I've liked watching them play. They're really good with Embiid. You don't know if they're going to be healthy.
Yeah, they're sort of like Atlanta, where we finally are just like, you know what? Expectations are so high for years. We just sort of give up on high expectations. Everybody going into the year, and I watched the Philadelphia 76ers play in person in Miami on Monday night, and I was thinking about this. Like, before the year, everybody was like, well, they can either win 50-something games or they can win 20 games again or whatever it is. I'm like, well, it turns out they settled right in the middle of that. Yeah. Like, it's just, that's where and that's probably where they'll be next year too.
Yeah. And it's just like, if you told me they made the Eastern Conference Finals, not a shock. Just like, oh, so they put it together for a while. That's awesome. That's great. That's like really not patronizing. That's really cool. How do you build on that? What do you do? You're not going to have Embiid for half the season. How do you build two teams? How do you do that? Paul George is going to have another year on him. Embiid's going to have another year. I don't know. I don't know. I love Maxey. I love Edgecombe. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this team. So they're always going to be kind of here in the middle, the Sixers.
Embiid for Gobert, who says no.
That's a good one. The Sixers, the age thing. If he was younger, yes, but not if he's younger. Not if he's older. Can't do it.
Yeah, if Gobert was 2 years younger, maybe you do it.
The expiring money is valuable though.
Mm-hmm.
The next tier is we're a little lost. So they're on the trail and they think they know where they're going, but they're like a long way from the top and they're not exactly sure how to get there.
All right, bring them out. I know where you're going with this. Bring them out.
The Houston Rockets, the Orlando Magic, the Toronto Raptors, the Golden State Warriors, and the Miami Heat.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start with the Heat. I don't know what this team does. They're clearly not good enough. That's been cleared based now off of 4 straight years in the play-in tournament. However the season ends, like maybe they make it out of the play-in again. Maybe they make some noise in the first round. Like best case scenario, right? Mm-hmm. We know what this team is. Materially, it doesn't change the results of this season. Whether they lose in the play-in, make it out, whatever. And you can't use the Jimmy Butler hangover thing anymore. Frankly, this team is pretty much the same as it was even with Jimmy Butler in the regular season. Jimmy Butler was Tobias Harris in the regular season the last couple of years in Miami. Like he wasn't a regular season factor. And you were just banking on this playoff thing all the time with him after 2023. And now you don't even have that carrot to dangle, which I think is a good thing because I think it does clear some things up for Miami and forces them to actually look at the team in a sober way and be like, maybe 2023 isn't going to happen again. That thing that only happened once ever. Maybe we're not going to do that again. And I do think that this recent stretch where they've lost 7 of their last 8 games has to force them, after winning 7 straight, where they were drinking the Kool-Aid and all that stuff, and they're like, nope, we're right back. No matter what happens, they are the Jerry Seinfeld of the NBA. They're going to come up even every single time, and that's who they are, and they got to do something to shake it up. Now, that something is a lot more complicated, right? You can't trade Bam. He's the guy.
Yes, you can. Yes, that's it.
But they won't.
Then you're never going anywhere. It's not the Bam. You can't win with Bam. It's that you can't find your way out of this mess unless you trade Bam. That's the only way.
Sort of where I'm going with this. Like we could have the conversation about, can you move Hero for something? Can you move Wiggins if you opt? Yeah. It's like, yeah,
they want to be the Lakers where they want Luka Doncic to fall in their lap.
That's right.
Like that's what they want. And I'm just like, you had to work. I don't know why Riley thinks this. He had to work so hard to get LeBron. Yep. It took so much planning to put together the big three. And you had they did the documentary on it. They had to talk Dwayne back into it. Like Dwayne was ready to go to Chicago. Mm-hmm. Like they had to do all that work. And now they genuinely just think that by being the Heat, that stuff is going to fall their way.
They're looking for the Jimmy Butler trade again, where they turn Hassan Whiteside and Josh Richardson into Jimmy Butler.
I swear to God, Jimmy Butler is the worst thing to happen to this franchise.
Preaching to the choir.
So awful.
It gave him a false sense of, I think, not hope, but like a false sense of what's possible. Jimmy Butler was such a unique situation where he burnt bridges in so many organizations.
Yeah.
Where they got him as a distressed asset, but nobody ever doubted that he was still an awesome basketball player. That was never the thing. Even if you look at somebody like a Ja Morant, there's still doubt about like whether or not he's still athletic enough and they could shoot enough to age well and all that stuff.
I get why this happens. It just drives me nuts that when I try and be like, hey, you better be careful because this is probably like there's a lot of ways that this will not end well. And then the fans laugh. You think we're like the Sixers and Wolves. How did it end? Like, you're not special. Mm-hmm. Like, teams have to stop thinking they're special.
Right.
You know who doesn't think they're special? The Thunder. The Thunder don't think they're special. The Thunder are just like, we're not special, so we have to work twice as hard as everybody else because we're not a glamour market. We have to do all these extra things. We have to have a great culture and winning and stuff. It drives me nuts how these teams
This is what my dad told me growing up. You're not special. You're going to have to work extra hard.
Yeah.
This is how it works.
You want to talk about that? Do you want to get into that?
Maybe on the next one. So that's where Miami is because they need to do something bold to shake this up. I don't know what that is, whether it's overpaying, quote unquote, overpaying for that star who you have not overpaid for, quote unquote, in the past, Durant, Mitchell, Lillard, all that stuff. Either you're going to have to overpay for that star player or you're going to have to go the other direction, but they're going to have to do something bold to shake things up. I don't want to do all of these teams, so I'm going to let you pick which one you want to talk about.
Ooh, this is a good one. I don't want to talk about the Warriors.
Good.
I don't really want to talk about the Raptors just because I'm just like Scotty Barnes is awesome, but they traded for Brandon Ingram and now you're screwed. So it's between Orlando and Houston, and I've talked a lot about Houston, so let's go with Orlando.
Okay.
I think Orlando is just going to have to give up on the luxuries that they have. Jamal Mosley's going to be gone. That's like, I don't want anybody to lose their job, but that's pretty clear at this point. He's getting fired. The Raptors 31-0 run was like nail in the coffin. That's it. Unless they pull a rabbit out of the hat in the playoffs, there's no chance that he's getting out of the season alive. I heard last summer the Paolo was really frustrated with Jamal Mosley. I've heard consistently throughout this season Paolo's been very frustrated with Jamal Mosley. It just is what it is. You can bring in a different coach, but I do think you have to do the roster too. And so like part of this is they have to give up on the luxuries. They've held on to Jonathan Isaac and Isaac has no value at this point because of his injury stuff. But Goga in particular, it's like they have all these guys and they're like, oh, but we don't want to move them because like they're so valuable. Cool. You can't get better then because they're not giving you enough of what you need. You're going to have to just bring in like better quality veterans. And like what I mean by this, a good example of this is Tobias Harris. That when the Pistons were trying to be good and they just brought in Tobias from Philadelphia. Hey, here's a guy that everyone's kind of like, I mean, but he's just like Tobias Harris. Yeah, but you know what you're getting. It's a peanut butter sandwich. You know what you're getting. Are you like, oh my God, this is the best peanut butter sandwich of all time? No. Are you like, this is exactly what I wanted? Yes. It's just like, that's all you need is you need some veterans who are just peanut butter sandwiches. That's all you need to really be able to, I think, to push yourself forward along with some reinvigoration of the coaching style. Because once you have better coaching, everybody will buy in more. That probably gets you back to your defensive stuff. Wendell Carter Jr.'s had an awesome season. He's been really good this year. You've gotten really good seasons from Anthony Black. I think Tristan Da Silva's taken a leap. The wings, you're probably going to have to pick and choose on and be like, all right, we're going to ship out this guy and maybe add in this guy. Maybe this guy goes and this other one, like we want this one, not that one. Choose between the young guys. Maybe you look at breaking up Paulo Franz. I think that's really dangerous, but I think you at least keep the option open on what you want to do there.
Let's talk about the roster. So Jalen Suggs is the name that I think is the one that might have to get moved. They need to get Anthony Black in that starting lineup. He's good. And he's really
they're so good with Suggs, though.
They are so good with Suggs, but he's making a lot of money. I love Jalen Suggs. I would hate, if I were a team employing Jalen Suggs, I would hate to trade him. But unless you're going to move one of Paolo or Franz, something's going to your point, something's got to give. And you're already paying Desmond Bane because he's got the contract that came over from Memphis. You can't afford all these guys. And so I do wonder, I think breaking up Franz and Paolo is more realistic than I think we're talking about, that some people are talking about. Because they might just be forced to make that decision, especially if they want to hold on to Suggs. The problem with Suggs is he's so unavailable. Like, it's any given night, I have no idea if he's going to play. And I'm really excited to tune into a Magic game when he is playing because he transforms that team in a meaningful way. Both the way that they play, like aesthetically pleasing, and then obviously the results speak for themselves when he plays. But something's going to have to give with this roster. I said this going into last season. Everybody's like, they got to get a point guard. They got to get a point guard. They're like, okay. And then ended up getting like Tyus Jones. And I was like, that's not the Tyus Jones fallacy is now real for a lot of different teams, where it's like, this is the guy that we need, and it's like not. But I
have something I want to kind of like point out here. Okay. Suggs is 24 this season. All right.
Okay.
If we look back, Derek White was traded when he was 27. And this was Derek White's. Here were Derek White's shooting percentages from 3 leading up to that trade. 34%, 37%, 35%, 31% in 2022. And then he turns into Derek White. I just think it's too early to give up on Suggs. I just think I would give up. I would honestly trade Black. I really would.
Really?
Because having a guy that wreaks havoc and makes plays is so freaking valuable. To me, that's way more valuable. You can, Wes, you can find scores in this league. You can always find scores in this league.
Anthony Black has the size to play defense, though. And the thing I keep calling, he's cheap right now. And so, okay, so you're gonna have to trade one of Franz or Paolo.
Yeah. That's it.
If we want to make the argument that you trade one of those guys and keep Suggs, I'm here for it. I think Suggs is awesome.
I think it's really hard. I think one of the problems is I think it's really hard to put Franz Wagner on the outside giant poster outside the arena and sell tickets.
Yeah.
He's the better player. Everyone knows it.
Yep.
But it's very hard to sell tickets for Franz Wagner.
I don't even like Paolo probably still has the higher ceiling, and if you want to just double down on that, I don't have a problem with it.
I mean, what you honestly might do is you might just try and trade Paolo for another team's best player. If they're like, it isn't working for us, maybe we need somebody need somebody else. Like, we'll give you our best player who we can't make it work with for your best player that you can't make it work with.
They're an interesting Giannis team, also potentially
for sure. But I don't think Giannis goes there. I just don't.
No, that's right.
This one is
them not being able to figure out a way to get Franz and Paolo to work. I understand that there's been injuries the last couple of years, but again, that shelf life is done. Like you're reaching the point now where you have to make the decision on it. It's not ideal because you would have liked to see more reps with them together those last couple of years, but it didn't work. And the stress test of trying to turn one of them into the lead playmaker did not work. Even though they've both taken steps in that direction, they just haven't figured out a way to play off of each other, and it's just not working. So you may have to make a decision there.
Yeah. We got 2 more tiers. I'll go through them quick.
Yep.
This one is just get to the trail, and it's Mavericks and Nets.
Okay.
Just like the Nets at least have a clean cap sheet, good coaching, got some pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They could actually start trying to be good this year. So it's just like get out the door. The Mavericks are obviously ahead, and the expectations are a little bit higher, I think. Where next year it's going to be like, hey, could they compete for a play-in spot, right? If you've got PJ and Najee along with Cooper, you add another high draft pick. Let's say what if they won the lottery and they got DeBonza? Like that'd be really exciting. Like Flag and DeBonza, and that's a lot of forwards, but still, like okay, that's really cool. And like you can kind of do there. You know, Kyrie comes back next season. I don't necessarily know that that's a great fit. I think you should probably move on from Kyrie because your timeline's been reset. But whatever. Like the Mavericks, at least, like you've reset.
Flag. You know what you're doing.
You cleared Anthony Davis. You moved on from the Luka trade. You can just like start over with Flag. Nets is just like you're starting over from complete scratch.
Yep.
And then the final tier is these teams are completely lost. They are in the middle of the brush. They're in a gully. They do not know how to get out. There's some sort of animal rustling behind them. Sun's getting real low.
And they don't see any of it. It's Sacramento Kings.
Your Sacramento Kings. The Memphis Grizzlies. The New Orleans Pelicans, the Portland Trailblazers, the Chicago Bulls, and the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yep.
I don't know how any of those teams find where they need to go.
Lucky in the lottery, right? That's it. Like for some of these teams, like a team like Chicago,
I've been yelling about this on Locked On NBA. It's not going to save them. Like the Kings can get Darren Peterson, and it will just be like, man, Darren Peterson did not work out, huh? The Kings can get Cameron Boozer, and it's like Cameron Boozer has requested a trade in 7 years. Yeah. When they've won 30 games for 7 years, unless they change the organization, unless you find a way to have your organization be competent, you're screwed. Memphis is just going to keep cycling through draft picks. That's just what they're going to do. Like Cedric Howard's awesome. Edie, they dominate in his minutes. I'm going to wind up being wrong on Edie, and I'm fine. I'm just like decided to take the position I have on him. Pelicans are a little interesting because it's just like one of the things that's interesting with Borrego is like there's a lot of feeling that they're going to move on from Borrego, which I think Borrego's been really good for them. But a lot of talk that they're going to go in a different direction there. The Blazers, I think, are actually amongst the saddest, where I'm just like, what do you do here? Like, oh, we have Denny Avdia, an all-star.
Yeah, it feels like they're at the beginning stage of where these other middling teams have been for the last few years. And it's just like, okay, we're going to be like, we're just starting our foray into the play-in mediocrityville. Mm-hmm. We're just going to live here for a while.
Who's making a leap? Like who's making a leap?
It needs to be Scoot, and it hasn't.
It's not going to be.
Right.
You know? Bulls at least have some, Bulls are like interesting at least. The Bulls are like lost, but at least it's like, okay, new coach when Donovan leaves, Modest Bazelis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Smith, add draft pick, a lot of interesting stuff there. And then the Bucks are the Bucks.
Yeah, the Bucks are the Bucks for a lot of different reasons. Not only because the whole Giannis factor, but also they've proven that they can't draft very well. They don't really. They're the Damian Lillard money is on their books. The dead money on that. They got to figure out if Giannis does leave, what are we doing with Miles Turner? What are we doing with Kyle Kuzma? What are we doing with all this stuff? So no pushback from me on any of those either. Matt, you're the only one that could do this as well as you do it. Tears, always exciting.
Thanks, man.
All right, that'll do it for today's episode of Real GM Radio with Wes Goldberg. Thanks again to Matt Moore for jumping on the show as he does every month with his monthly tiers. Make sure that you're subscribed to Real GM Radio on your podcast feed, and also make sure that you check us out on YouTube, where you're not only going to get Real GM Radio with Wes Goldberg every Tuesday, but you're also going to get Good Take with me and Mike Shear on Thursdays, and then on Mondays and Wednesdays, you're going to get the Double Dribble podcast with Mo Dakhil and Jared Dubin. Check everything out that we got going on. Exciting things happening here on the Real GM Radio Network. Thanks for listening.